Well, let's get started. Start with introductions. I'm Greg. I'm the co-founder of Carvertise, and just wanted to say very excited to be able to partner with Miles on this webinar.
Mark Lagos with Director of Sales with Carvertise. I'm excited to be here and appreciate Miles' efforts in all this.
I'm Elena Frascone, Account Director at Miles. Thanks for everyone to having me here today.
And I am Vince Satarian and Account Supervisor at Miles.
All right, so going to jump right in here. We're obviously super excited to be here today, partnering with our friends here at Carvertise. But before we get into a couple of case studies that we're excited to walk through today, I wanted to take a moment to briefly introduce Miles. So a lot of you on the call here know us already. Miles Partnership is a travel consultancy that's focused exclusively on our organizational goal of enriching lives through travel. So our mission is to continue to be a positive impact for the communities and travelers that we're fortunate to serve every day. And we really see ourselves not only as marketers, but as problem solvers. We really strive to identify and target opportunities for our destination and hospitality clients to be more impactful. We look to amplify their brand reach in creative and different ways. And always foster strategic partnerships like the one we have here today, where we case study various clients with our friends at Carvertise. So our goal is always to align innovation and creative ideas to client strategy. We're very fortunate to be working with so many DMOs, both domestic and international, two of which here, we won't spoiler alert yet, we're going to case study, and I'm really hyping it up at this point for everyone. But with a variety of core services, we see ourselves as an extension of our clients' teams. We're really excited, especially to talk today about the creative out-of-home work we've been doing as an extension of our media buying and advertising services. You'll see that non-traditional activation style media on the next slide is something our account teams are passionate about doing. One more slide, Vince. And we've done this in various ways in the past for many of our clients. And while we really don't set out to win awards, it's nice to see that our work gains major recognition. And as we think about the next big thing, we met with Greg and his team to really determine how we could take our marketing to the next level. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Mark to really set the scene for us.
Thanks, Elena. So a 2019 Nielsen study concluded that wrapped vehicles are the most memorable form of transit advertising. Carvertise works with 40 DMOs and CVBs all across the country. Vince, you can go next slide. So Carvertise works with 40 DMOs and CVBs all across the country. And next slide, what we do is simple. It's very simple. We work with those DMOs to find their top feeder markets. And within those top feeder markets, we will wrap a fleet of Uber cars with their branded logos. And then all day, every day, they're on the road in that market. Then within that market, we will identify specific events, whether it's sporting events, concerts, fairs, festivals, and we will swarm those events with their branded logos. With their branded cars. We're able to provide data analytics and web lift attribution. That, in a nutshell, a very small nutshell, is Carvertise. It's simple, yet incredibly effective. And I know Elena and Vince are going to talk more specifically about a couple of the campaigns that we've worked on together recently. So I'll hand it back to Elena and Vince. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have at the end. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. So the first one that we're going to talk to you today is a really great destination in North Carolina called Boone. They are just outside of Charlotte, up in the Appalachian Mountains. It's first and foremost a historic destination, home to Appalachian State University, but it has a really diverse offering, being a college town, being in the mountains, and a lot to offer just from an activities and things to do perspective, including being the ski capital of the South. So over the last couple of years, we've been working with the Explore Boone team on a brand research process, key stakeholder interviews, and doing a lot of research to figure out how we can set them apart within the region, and ultimately landed on the Inspiring Awe messaging, which is something that they can put out into the market to stand apart. A separate piece of that, though, was working with Boone on their ski market, which is something that we really wanted to push in the coming years. So we decided to partner with Carvertise in the Atlanta market, adding a layer on top of what we were doing digitally. So we wanted to push the Ski Boone vanity URL out with out of home, and then layer on the Carvertise activation, which they helped us kind of, design everything in-house on their end, and ultimately putting everything on the vehicle that mimics sort of the overall skiboon.com messaging. So each of these locations that we decided to swarm was based on, the digital activations that we were doing in the Atlanta market. So over a 2-month period of time, we were able to swarm for about 3 hours on average for key events that we thought would really align with our audience targeting in Atlanta. Some of those being the SEC championships, Atlanta Falcons games, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, including also things like Futures and Friends, and ultimately ending on a Barry Manilow concert, which was a nice thing to kind of just throw into the mix compared to the sports stuff that we were doing. Each of the times that we had cars in market, we were able to kind of leave takeaway cards. So what you're looking at on the bottom of the screen is actually a handout or a leave behind that folks would be able to sort of take with them, scan the URL, and ultimately go see everything that Boone has to offer from a winter activities perspective, which served a really good purpose. The Explore Boone digital results for Carvertise, which they were able to sort of track via GPS and all that stuff through the placer data, really exceeded our expectations. There was over 30,000 miles driven during those swarms in total, ultimately leading up to 4.4 million impressions, and ultimately gaining $17,000 in brand awareness at the end of the day. But on top of the Carvertise data, we were also wanting to tie everything back to the DMO in particular. So the data for the website for skiboon.com saw a 102% increase year over year on the Ski Boone website, decrease in overall bounce rate, 12% increase in session duration. So those users were spending more time based on this information, and ultimately ending on an 88-to-1 ROI and increases in occupancy tax in the months of January and February. So we were very pleased to see those results. No, the horse is not included in any of those pieces, but just wanted to throw that out there because people really do ultimately love these car wraps, and it's really great just to kind of have that on the ground for an extended period of time and have all that extra brand awareness.
That's my favorite photo ever, by the way. It's precious. Thanks. All right, so our second case study here, jumping in with some work that we've done on behalf of the U.S. Virgin Islands. So a little bit of background on our relationship with them. We started in a recovery campaign capacity at the start of the pandemic, which feels like many lifetimes ago at this point. And actually, the recovery that we were looking to market with was around the 2 hurricanes, Irma and Maria. So really when the pandemic started, we felt uniquely positioned to have the now open for business kind of messaging roll out. So over time, we worked diligently with the Department of Tourism there to grow the account to include major media activation opportunities to push our new Naturally in Rhythm branding, which you can kind of see demonstrated with some of our new creative there on the right. So having this initiative be very events focused, our first opportunity to really make a big splash was around the destinations feature in Sports Illustrated. The islands of St. Thomas and St. Croix were featured in the annual swimsuit issue spread, which was very exciting. So after that issue came out, there was the opportunity to have these kind of exciting party activations afterward, a collaborative event called Pay with Change. So this particular initiative focused on Sports Illustrated's gender equity advertising initiative that included experiences and programming that really focused on inclusion, empowerment, and beauty of all kinds. So there were 2 big events, one in Hollywood, Florida, and one in New York. New York was actually the event where they revealed the swimsuit issue cover. And we thought, what better time than to make kind of a big splash. So that is an event that we decided to swarm. So you'll see on the next page what some of those wrapped cars look like. It featured very general destination branding. So it had, all three islands represented equally: St. John, St. Thomas, and St. Croix. And again, you can see when folks were entering and leaving the party, the cars were outside, and it really made a big splash. So wanting to capitalize on the success of that program, we focused our attention next on Philadelphia. So those of you on the call who are Jay-Z fans, I'm sure many of you are, there was a major festival where USVI had a brand sponsorship. It's called Made in America, happens every year. It's kind of like a Lollapalooza, Coachella kind of vibe. And what we decided to do here was do another swarm activation where the cars were wrapped specifically in St. Croix creative. And so we have branded St. Croix a vibe like no other. So as we think about kind of our Naturally in Rhythm brand extensions, we have these kind of micro brands that work in tandem to promote each of the islands independently. And so that's what we did there. But we really didn't stop. While the cars were still in Philadelphia, we wanted to think about other areas in which we could kind of get that brand messaging out there, especially while it was getting kind of cold outside. So we did swarms outside of Lincoln Financial Field for each of the Eagles playoff games. We did Citizens Bank Park for the Phillies playoff and World Series home games. So a lot of opportunity to kind of generate that brand awareness in a very short period of time. So all of this happened within 1 month. So as we look at some of the stats from that programming, drivers have exceeded our expectations with over 12,000 miles in 1 month, almost 2 million impressions, resulting in an additional $14,000 worth of brand awareness. So as we think about the campaign performance overall, over 6 million impressions for all of that programming. And I believe we actually still have some of those cars in market now. So we're excited to kind of see how that programming continues. But wanted to really touch on why this tactic worked for USVI. Obviously, this is a very splashy client that has a lot of very cool activations that we're very excited to be part of. But we did make sure that our out-of-home opportunities were part of an overall media strategy that encompassed tactics at every part of the funnel. We work strategically with our marketing and PR opportunities to make a really big splash with the creative that we do. And we were excited to see that in 2022, of which this programming took place, there were over 500 million impressions across all media channels. And through our economic impact research and data partners, we determined that there was $2.4 million of hotel revenue generated that was tied directly to our media outreach. So again, as we look for like quantifiable ROI, really excited to see how our marketing efforts are successful in that way. So I know we went through some of those kind of quickly, but turning it over to Greg to kind of bring us home.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say we're thrilled to work with Miles and their clients on these initiatives. Three kind of takeaway points. Budgets are different, but this tactic can work for DMOs of all sizes. I think you're looking at Explore Boone team of 4, I believe, or 3. USVI is a lot bigger, right? But both were able to use Carvertise in a way that kind of best fit their DMO's needs. The second part is just what I think Miles did really well with their clients is they knew their audience well. So we identified events that they knew their audience would be at, and we swarmed them. We knew the markets that were most of interest to them that had the most potential. Stuff that's coming down the pike and that we can offer is both being able to now digitally retarget people that have seen the car. So if people are exposed to the ad at a concert or at a festival, we can then digitally retarget those people as well. Doing it on a horse might be a little more difficult because they don't have cell phones, but the concept is the same.
The technology will get there one day.
Technology will get there probably in the next couple of years or so. But also, we're also introducing our work with Placer, which helps identify not just big events, but also local shopping centers or happy hours, things that are very localized by zip code that can also identify where your specific travel-oriented audience goes, and we could send cars there as well. So we're getting more targeted and more contextual with being able to get cars at whether it's mass market events like concerts or sports games, or it's very targeted niche, demographics. We can do both. And then we added be brave and have fun, because why not? That's a great message. But yeah, that's really it. Thank you to everyone for the webinar. We'd love to answer any questions you have. And I just want to also emphasize it's been a pleasure working with Miles and the opportunity to serve both of these DMOs.
Great.
Yeah. Any questions or I think someone
Looking
said
at Q&A, no open questions at this time, I hope.
No, it looks like the chat is not wanting to be open.
someone texted me saying they can't write on the chat, so I just want to make sure it's disabled.
Well, perhaps it's for the best. But please put your questions in Q&A.
Q&A should work now.
So tell us, Greg, just while we're letting some folks throw a few things in there, what are some of the other kind of exciting partnerships you've done this last year that were maybe a little bit different and impactful based on the work that you guys have done historically? You don't have to pick the people we case studied.
Well, USVI was great. Another one is Visit Tampa Bay. They do a campaign where they target 4 or 5 of their feeder markets, and they're just very strategic in the timing that they place the cars in, the events that are around the cars, and also the design. I think one thing Vince touched on is that we help with the design, so we do in-house, but creative matters. I think with Ski Boone or Explore Boone, and USVI, like USVI had full wraps. They wrapped the entire car, and like that was a big splash. Ski Boone opted for the advanced partial, which allowed it's a lower cost per unit, but the messaging was still very clear. So I think that's how I'd answer that question.
Some folks want to know, what are the biggest opportunities for smaller DMOs like Boone with you guys?
I think it's if you're a smaller DMO and you're near a big city and it's expensive to advertise in that big city, you need to do something that makes a splash. That's where Carvertise comes in. So a lot of our smaller DMOs like Boone, it's in that, hey, we're near Atlanta. How are we making a splash in Atlanta? It's a big market. There's a ton of competition. Same thing with New York City or Philly. This is a very new tactic that lets you get mass exposure and target exposure as well to your demographic that doesn't break the bank. There's actually a good case study we have with Visit Lake Charles. This is interesting. They had $150,000 total to spend in Austin. So that was their budget, $150,000 total. They spent around $30,000 with us in that market, and they saw a 65% web lift. So they had other things going on. It's full funnel. They had social media. They had some food influencers. They did work with Expedia and Adara. So we are part of that package. But that's a good example of a DMO that it's not the biggest budget, especially for a city like Austin, but being able to kind of fit in to their needs about where we can Carvertise fit.
Can you talk a little bit about the type of cars that you have in the fleet? I know most of them, if not all, are all owned by the people who are wrapping the vehicles with you guys.
Yeah, so these cars they have to be 2015 and newer. So they have to be new cars, no dents, no scratches. They have to go through a thorough vetting process. But we have over 500,000 drivers signed up for our platform. And so the way it works is that these are Uber drivers who they're already driving around, they're picking people up, they're interacting with people. And what we do is we just go and say, hey, why don't you get paid to advertise for this destination? And we give them brochures they can hand out, kind of like Explore Boone did. So that's how it is. We're getting about 50 to 100 new drivers signing up a day. So we're not limited by inventory. So someone also asked what markets you're in. We operate across the United States as well as Canada, and we're expanding into Europe later in the year. Yeah, that's what the cars are. It's taking an asset like rideshare, DoorDash, Grubhub. They're already driving. This is a way they can earn extra money, and we can help DMOs promote a message in those markets.
And Vince, going back to your question before, with terms of events, we're able to, like what Greg was talking about, like we just had a handful of clients at the Super Bowl, swarming the Super Bowl and the Phoenix Open for the week prior. And, you can well imagine that any kind of Super Bowl sponsorship can cost a lot of money, and ours is a fraction of that. And we're able to create that presence at that event for any of our clients. So to the person who's wondering about opportunities for smaller DMOs, for a limited budget, we can create a presence at any event. We did Visit Fort Worth at the NCAA College Football Championships in Los Angeles as well. So there was those kind of opportunities that are available.
What would you say the most frequently swarmed things are for DMOs?
Greg, you want to, I mean,
It's a good question. I think it just depends. Food and wine festivals are very popular, right? Especially if you're going after that foodie type of traveler, higher income. And then sports games are also very popular. Like, I mean, USVI being able to get at the World Series, like, is just, it's incredible. Like, you got, 100,000 people in a great mood, excited.
right. And with some
engaging with, yeah, and at like a fraction of a cost to be an act, like, so sports games are good, especially if they're doing well. That's always pretty popular. And then third is definitely Barry Manilow. I mean, the demand for the Barry Manilow concerts. Just
what an opportunity that was. Yeah.
You're doing a SE championship game in one hand, and then in the other hand, you're doing Barry Manilow. Like, you're covering the spectrum there.
I think it's really
something for everyone.
Going back to our favorite horse picture. I think, naturally people either from Boone, been to Boone, or USVI in the same capacity. And, you get a lot of social interaction from folks as well, taking pictures of the vehicles themselves, because it's not just a typical Uber, it's like a custom car. So it also in way of itself is kind of special for the people that end up riding in it, because I don't think that the car that's going to pick you up is wrapped. So it's kind of a fun surprise for folks as well, just to talk about your brand online.
Elena, did you want to answer what are the biggest opportunities for smaller DMOs like Boone question? Said you would like to answer the question.
Oh, I think I just clicked it thinking we were going to answer it live, but I feel like we touched on it. No, nothing additional to add there. I think we answered that one pretty well. But yeah, I mean, I think just to the point of making any budget work creatively, like talking to your agencies and really saying, like, I have this budget, I want to make a big splash. Like, what are some of the non-traditional marketing opportunities can I look at that would really help me to kind of elevate my brand in an interesting way? And so those are kind of the conversations we had with our clients, and what ultimately led us to partnering with Carvertise in a few situations. So I think that's great.
One of the things that we're really excited about is the upcoming retargeting work. Can you share a little bit more about how that works for the rest of the folks? Like, how is that going to be, attributed to data for the digital media side with Placer?
Well, there's two things. So with Placer, that's more of like being able to make recommendations. There's two ways of Placer. Placer can help you make recommendations on like where your travelers are going and what they're doing in your feeder markets. So Placer will be able to say, like, hey, you want a travel-oriented high-income audience, they go to these events and they live here, and this is where they go shopping, and this is the Whole Foods they go to. Like, it can get very, very specific. So the way Placer is used is saying, hey, within Atlanta, let's identify these zip codes, and not just events, but also, kind of place-based messaging to intercept this audience as they go about things. On the backside, Placer can also give data about when we do a swarm, they can identify the demographics that were at the swarm. So we say we had cars at the Hawks game. They can say, okay, this demographic was at the Hawks game. This is how much income they had. This is the average, ethnicity of the people who went there. So it can just provide all this kind of foot traffic analysis about who is around the car, who is seeing the message, and and being able to target the type of person you want. Digital retargeting we do through another company called StreamMetrics, where we're able to capture device IDs of people who are around the car and then digitally retarget on their apps advertising to those people. And what we've been able to show traditionally is that the click-through rate is usually higher than just normal digital advertising, because the idea is that they've seen a car and then a few days later they get an ad, they're like, oh yeah, I think I saw this, and they click through it. So it's another level of being able to give a stronger touch point to your desired audience.
And one of the things about Placer that I think Greg alluded to, but when we identify that demographic that you're looking to target and where you can find them, then we send your cars there. Like, we send your cars specifically to those locations to spend time, whether it's a Home Depot or a Walgreens or a Target, whatever it is. That's where we can send your cars specifically and create that presence there.
Yeah, we're doing a campaign in LA where we're sending all the cars to In-N-Out Burgers, because just everyone goes there. So we're just lines of, because a lot of tourists go there too. So that's part of the equation. Yes.
Awesome. Well, I feel like we touched on a lot of our questions. We do have a last slide that has contact information here if anybody wants to reach out and share more. Mark's email is lagos@carvertise.com. Apologies for the oversight there, but email any of us and we'll make sure that he gets the message.
I got my picture on there, so that was good. Real quick, Elena, did we talk about, and I apologize if I missed this, what markets were available in? Did we answer that question?
Please jump in.
Just to let you know, it's pretty much any market. If you have a market you want to target, we can create a presence there for you. I just want to make sure we answer that question.